Apple finally takes on Amazon with Tim Cook's new favorite products.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Feature Podcast. We're on multiple times a week talking about technology, talking about artificial intelligence, even when I need to shoot it from very humid Louisiana where I'm at right now. A lot of fun topics in this one, man. Fun topics in this one. Stuff I'm excited to talk about. First up, we got to talk about Tim Cook taking on Jeff Bezos. And what that really is them going after the smart home market. And it's interesting. The wording on all this is interesting because it's Apple has had smart home stuff for years now, but they have never really aggressively pursued it in any kind of way. But it seems like with the advent of Apple Intelligence and AI and multimodal camera stuff at home and all these kinds of things, Apple's really going to give it a go with some new devices coming out.
Yeah, this first device is honestly probably the last device I would have expected to hear that Apple is going to make. And that is a smart home camera. So this is like a Ring camera, a Blink camera, like the equivalent of that. I'm sure they would quickly find that they have to make multiple variations because if you're going to buy into this camera ecosystem, you need an exterior one, you need potentially an interior one, you need like a doorbell, and all these things. But these are for them to take on people like Eve, who works with HomeKit, but then also people like Ring. And many people are used to smart home cameras at this point, and they're gaining features, especially with AI, where it can recognize things and give you much smarter alerts, not just that there was motion at this and you get notifications every time anything happens in the particular zone. It can actually let you know a little more information about that. And seems like that's where Apple is looking to go with this and make some kind of camera. This is according to Kuo, that would have rich integration with Siri and Apple Intelligence. So it would probably have Apple Silicon within it. And they do expect this to be become a major accessory because they're expecting annual shipments in the tens of millions. What are your thoughts on this, Matt?
I did. This is a weird rumor, right? It's a weird rumor because one, that's a weird device for Apple to make. I think. It wouldn't surprise me if they make it. Heck, they were going to make a car at one point, right? So at least a smart home camera is at least a little more in the wheelhouse. But here's where I think there's another piece of this puzzle that we're not seeing here, and this rumor's not necessarily indicating on the surface. And you kind of alluded to it, is that if you're going to do Apple Intelligence on it, and you're going to use the model that Apple Intelligence uses on, say, the phones and everything else. And by model, I don't mean the actual LLM. I mean like their modus operandi, if you will, and how they're using it, which is as much on-device as possible, going to the cloud as little as you can. When you go to the cloud, it's all secure, all those kinds of things. So are you telling me they're going to put A17 chips in every smart home camera? Like, is that what we're going to do here? Or is there going to be some kind of smart hub system, and this is going to be part of that overall package? And I think that kind of makes a little more sense to me that you're not going to have the ability to buy just the Apple camera. It's going to have some kind of home hub that it's going to be able to connect to and work off of, and that's how it's actually going to integrate and do stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are rumors about that hub itself, which we'll get to in a second. But first, on the camera side, this did make me think about just the security aspect. So I think Ring has been known to like have not just data leaks, but you find out that the employees were actually able to access people's footage in an anonymous way or whatever, things like that. And so this could be the space where Apple enters and goes, "Hey, you love our privacy, right? We're doing that now with home cameras to the point where maybe you actually feel comfortable that you have an interior camera because it's any of the processing that it's figuring out what is happening is done on device. It's all secure. It's all connected to your HomePod, or whatever HomePod device you have, which is secure. And even if you just have exterior cameras, it's all this ecosystem that is figuring things out and understanding, but all staying here, like within your home, and then it can connect to the cloud when you want it. That's my thought, at least, with how they would do that and how they would brand it to get you excited about it, because it's home stuff and it's all connected, but it's Apple privacy behind it.
Right. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. That would be the market angle take for sure. I will say this though, if you put the Wi-Fi based cameras inside your house, you're a crazy person, man. You're a crazy person.
I'm yeah, same.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think they're great and they're very cool to have on exteriors, right? Like doorbell cams, all for it. Guys, don't nobody put cameras inside their house. Don't do it, man. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I have one that I set up for looking at my cat to make sure they're eating when I'm gone,
That-
like out of town. And then I, face it away or turn it off or unplug it when I'm not using it. But yeah, I can't imagine like having everywhere in your home covered by a camera that, even if it's secure, it's connected to Wi-Fi. It does seem pretty crazy.
yeah. And I know people who do that, man. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, like I think that's a bad idea. Cat cam on board with. I think that's a good move. But just
Thank
having
you.
like security cameras on in your house, like the privacy advocate in me does not think that's a good idea, even if it's an Apple system, right? Like I'd still wouldn't even really trust that. So, but yeah, what a interesting space for Apple to get involved in. And yeah, like that's where they're actually can add some value to it and say like, hey, like our thing is different because it is more secure, more private, however you want to word it.
Yeah, and I think Apple does do a good job of finding devices that you want to buy from them, and they obviously have this ecosystem. So if there's another device they can convince us to put into their ecosystem, and it just adds to your list of Apple devices that you're signed in with your iCloud account, I think it does end up working for them in the long run. And then you're appreciative of just all of these Apple intelligence features that can work simultaneously with all of these things. And that brings us to the hub that this would run off of, which is apparently going to be a new type of HomePod with a screen. So we've talked about this kind of rumor for a while, and now it's kind of starting to come a little more into focus. This would be a smart display device with like a small square screen that's apparently about the size of two iPhones put together, and it would be a smart HomePod speaker with that screen, and it would have a visual user interface that you can use as well. And it's kind of like the Amazon Echo Show that we see today, but it's Apple's version of that. And it's like this countertop version of a HomePod that isn't yet that robotic one with an arm, which apparently still is on the future plan, but it is coming a couple years later down the road that they would add that robotic arm with that different updated version of the HomePod.
I'll believe it when I see it, man. I don't think we're ever
Yeah.
getting that arm thing. But this is another example of how Apple has never gone with a full court press in the smart home market, right? Because every other competitor has a screen system. There's like you mentioned Amazon one, Google Home has a screen thing. So it's them not having one has left them out of a significant part of that market. Like Apple really has only made those speakers, and that's it. And I know me and you are Siri HomeKit people, but a lot of people are on Google Home or Alexa because they offer more variety of products, more flexible products. And if you're a person who doesn't want to to integrate with your smart home that often, having that screen is super helpful. And even just displaying data on it is the weather or the news, whatever you want to put on it, right? It's super helpful. And it's especially going to be helpful when Apple Intelligence is integrated across the board, right? Sometimes it makes so much more sense to get a visual information from an AI than to get the audio information from it. So you gotta make a screen at that point. And I think Apple's been kind of betting that, everyone has an iPhone in their pocket or they have iPads. That's what they can use for kind of smart home interaction in a visual way if they really want to. But having that kind of always on device that sits on the counter that's designed for that, I think is more how people actually want to use these things.
Yeah, and then if they're developing their own cameras that you're going to buy, this is another device that you can have that's kind of always on like that and can always display that camera just at a tap without you having to unlock your phone with Face ID or whatever and have that extra step. It would just be that home integration where it's like, these are my home devices. This is a separate thing. I can access it on my phone, but I'm not beholden to this device that's in my pocket in order to utilize that other Apple device. So they're a great way of convincing you to buy more and more devices for dedicated tasks, even though technically you could do most of them already on your phone.
Yeah, well, then Apple's been really good at that for a while, right? Like, I mean, when
Hmm.
the iPad came out, everyone's like, "Well, why do I need an iPad? I already have a phone." Does the same thing. Sell a lot of iPads. When the watch came out, why do I need that? I already got like it's Apple has sold redundant devices many times. So yeah, I get, I have nothing but faith that they'll be able to sell these things to people, even though it's kind of duplicating functionality that already exists.
Yeah. And speaking of functionality, a little bit of a pivot here, but Apple is now under pressure again from the EU, which we've seen this come to fruition in a number of ways. The most obvious being the fact that our phones now have USB C, kind of came down from the EU. But they're apparently under pressure to remove geo blocking restrictions to a degree with Apple Media Services. So this includes things like Apple TV Plus, Apple Music, and the App Store, because in certain regions it'll be a different interface, it will have different features and different things available, and they're apparently looking to at least somehow change this. What do you know about this, and what are your thoughts, Matt?
I think anyone who's traveled internationally knows that the digital world looks a little different when you're in different spots, right? Like there's certain, websites will be different, apps will be different, what's available to stream will be different, where you can stream a certain thing will be different, even depending on how they do like international distribution rights. App functionality is different in different places. So, I mean, and that's true in America, state to state. It's a, I'm in Louisiana now, right? And thing here is that to access pornographic images online in Louisiana, you have to have an ID. Like you have to like sign in and like do a verification with an ID. It is. I would say I do not believe it is an effective system, but yeah, like region differences just happens all over the place, right? And in my mind, this is crazy because I don't know if you would ask me this 5 or 6 years ago, I would have agreed with it. I think the EU is helping us all out right now with all these. I think they go too far sometimes with this regulations, but I do think that at least they seem to have a idea of making products work well for the consumer. Some things I think is a miss from them. Like I don't think everything about Epic and the App Store and Apple having to allow sideloading of apps in the EU. That didn't make as much sense to me because I feel like that was just more about corporations deciding who gets the money, not really making a better thing for the consumers. But as you mentioned, USB-C, I think Apple probably would have eventually migrated to USB-C either way. But the EU forcing their hand, I think, was a net positive for everyone. And I think standardizing the rules so that you're not in this confusing wicket of things when you're traveling through the EU or through the world, I think it's would be a good thing for consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've experienced that just with content. I would love if that changes, but of course it's very complex. It's how all of this works, and it's all of these different companies having different streaming rights in different regions when you're coming down to that. So I'm curious to see how this would move forward. It seems like it's almost an impossible task to solve in that way, like through Apple, because it involves so many things and parties. But maybe there is something that Apple can do at the top end where, because they're providing all of these services to people, maybe they can work out these deals to make it just more streamlined. Because
What
I've definitely had the experience where I download like a show in the US, I travel internationally, it has expired, that download, and then I'm done because
Yeah,
it's not available in that country that I'm in.
absolutely right. And so then there could be a negative side to this too, though. So let's say EU forces Apple to make some rule in the App Store that app functionality has to be the same regardless of region. Well, they're not going to, the people who don't have the access to whatever it is or the ability or whatever that is, they're not all of a sudden they're not going to give those people the ability. They're just going to take it away from someone else, maybe, right? So if like,
Hmm.
if your app has a functionality in one region and not in the other, they might just take that functionality away entirely if the rule is worded in a way that, oh, like apps have to function the same regardless of region.
Yeah, I mean, Apple Intelligence features are only available in certain regions right now, so that could be a good example of like if things moved super quickly, do they have to either force these features out to everyone immediately, or have some sort of clear release timeline, which could be good, or do they actually have to pull back releasing these features until they're available across the board? And certain developments don't really work that way. It needs to be kind of a smaller, staggered release region by region. So that will be interesting, definitely to see.
Especially with AI stuff, right? Because a lot of those slow rollouts are more about language issues, right? It just takes longer to get, Apple, because the majority of their client base is English speakers, at least if not natively as a second language. English is always going to be the priority, right? And then those other languages just take more time because it takes money and time to get those things out, and that's just how it works. So like if the EU words this some kind of regulation like that, so it's like, oh, like it has to happen all at the same time, it really means that we're probably going to get things later rather than everyone else gets it sooner.
Yeah. So speaking of all of this stuff and new features, on a very different side of things, Apple has their program Final Cut Pro. It's their pro editor. It's extremely popular at this point, I think, especially because it just works so well with their own computers. And it's a really great way to make videos and put it out quickly. It's what I use all the time. I think it's what you use all the time, correct?
Oh yeah. I've been a Final Cut user for years now. One of my very first popular videos, like 1 million kind of view videos, was like I did a review of Final Cut 10 the day it came out. So whenever that was, 2010 or something like that, 9 maybe. So yeah, I'm always been a Final Cut 10 fan. So
Nice. So there's some new features coming out, and some of them are very exciting, a little overdue, and some of them are very future looking. So first is spatial video support. I think this is a little overdue, but also it kind of makes sense because there hasn't really been that much of a market for spatial video. And now that the Apple Vision is out, there's still honestly not much of a market for spatial video because not many people have that device or are buying it at its $3,500 price point, as we've heard. But they're adding spatial video support within Final Cut Pro so that you can actually edit this footage, which is great to see because until now, if you want to watch spatial video, it's just whatever that raw video was that you took on your iPhone or your friend sent you. And so in addition to that, they're adding immersive titles and effects, reportedly. A lot of this comes from a Vision OS 2 press release that Apple posted in June about. So I'm excited to see that. I'll at the least make some little basic video with this because I can take spatial video on my phone and then I could add immersive titles and make some kind of fun little thing there. But the next feature is not Apple Vision exclusive. Going to be a huge one, automatic AI-generated captions. So this is something that at this point is just becoming basically standard on any vertical content that you see, like on Instagram Reels or TikTok or anything like that. And a lot of people do this automatically with different third-party softwares, and now Apple is adding it within Final Cut Pro.
cool. Long overdue, right? That technology. I mean, they're putting the AI moniker on it, but just transcription technology has been around for quite some time now, and now it's just it's improved because it's using generative AI to kind of figure out what's going on. Dude, I used this new app this week. I've been playing with it. It's called Captions. It was originally made to do auto captions for videos and put them like vertical video, the exact kind of thing you were just talking about, right? Where it's designed for TikTok or whatever, and it'll actually put the caption on the screen and whatever you're saying does it all automatically. Pretty slick, right? But that's not that impressive. But what it also has is full AI editing, so you can literally just load up a raw video and cut it and then put the captions into it. And then it also has AI video generation with fake influencer looking people, so you don't even have to be on camera or do anything, and it works on prompts. So you could literally just tell it, make a video being excited about whatever, your new iPhone case, and then it just makes it. And it probably in out of a couple minutes, it spits out a 30-second to 1 minute video, all edited. It looks totally real because the method they're using is not full generative. They have actors and they're doing the generative part of it is just on the mouth and the words, right? But they are also, it's smartly picking what their face is doing and how everything is working in that regard. So it seems super real. It 100% seems real. And I was all like, Oh man, it's game over for influencers, dude. Like I don't know like how much longer the traditional
Yeah.
influencer is going to be around because if I'm a company, like yeah, I'm going to use this kind of software. And then I don't even know, I mean, we talk about how we just mentioned how Final Cut very popular with online content creator people because it's gives you a ton of features, but it's super easy to use. It's probably not going to be at the at the forefront for very much longer because it's much better to use these other kinds of software that makes it easier. A lot of people in that space are not even starting with Final Cut anymore because they're using things like CapCut and these other more online vertical video kind of editors that AI a lot of stuff for you. So good. I'm glad Final Cut's getting AI captions. I still think it's probably is the beginning of its slow demise, along with every other nonlinear editing system in existence.
Yeah, unfortunately. That rumor, or not rumor, I guess that feature was first unveiled in the Mac Mini demo. So they're showing off this feature because it's enabled by Apple Silicon with the Apple Intelligence features, but it actually hasn't released yet in Final Cut. But we know that it is coming, which is exciting and definitely long overdue because if you're using Final Cut, you like Final Cut. Now it's finally going to be built in. You're not going to have to bounce it out to CapCut or have a third party thing. So, yeah, glad to see Apple catching up, or at least somewhat catching up in that regard. We'll see what the future holds for that because it is a little bit of a scary future that you're presenting, but it seems to be what the future is. They're also adding more of an AI based tracking system for masking. And this will be another one of those features that's great to see. I think that might be a little more of a pro feature, though, that for stuff that is still being made by humans would actually be extremely useful to have built in within Final Cut, and AI is enabling.
Yeah, I mean, you say yes, the AI background removal kind of stuff. For people who don't know what masking, imagine it's you're trimming out part of the video and just like making it so where a mask is just showing the specific thing you want. It's using video in effects, VFX stuff a lot. But yeah, this is something that is already on the Adobe side. They've already, Adobe has committed to AI hardcore, right? So like AI's
Hmm.
generative AI is being built into every Adobe product now. And yeah, this is Apple, I think, just catching up and making sure they're staying on par with everybody else.
Yeah. So the last thing up today is Face ID for Mac. There's a new patent for this from Apple for desktop and laptops. That this might come as a replacement to Touch ID. I have always wondered why they don't have Face ID because they already have the camera right there. But at the same time, Touch ID is not that difficult, and you already have to kind of press the button to wake the computer. So, what are your thoughts on Face ID here?
This also seems like something that should already be there. Why is there the notch on MacBooks if not to put the Face ID system in it, right? Like it doesn't make
Hmm.
any sense. Like why even design it that way? So yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like the button. Well, and the thing was like with desktop machines, right? You're already resting your hands on a keyboard either way, right? So it's already right there to access it. But I could see you could do some more interesting stuff with it, especially if it allows for like multiple user IDs and stuff like that. So it instantly recognizes that you logs you into your profile, which is what the Touch ID system also does already. But maybe it'll just be a little faster, a little nicer. I could see it being one of those features that is it seems neat and useful, but not like it's going to change my life or anything, right? Like yeah, the Touch ID works fine.
Yeah, so some new features from Apple, but overall, we're seeing them potentially diving into the home space in a big way and taking on Amazon.
Take them down, Tim.